Height is good for you too? I'm gonna pull it down.
Yeah, that'll work.
Well, good afternoon, Tuskegee. How are you doing? Well, I'm telling you, you're in for a treat today. Are you ready? All right, I'm Gloria Tinubu, Associate Professor of Community Economics in the College of Agriculture, Environment, and Nutrition Sciences, and I'm ecstatic to be here with you today to make this introduction. And really, it's kind of hard to introduce someone who doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to try to do my best. When I saw Mike on The Breakfast Club, DJ Envy introduced him, and I remember him said, "Oh, I like that introduction. I need to take him around with me." Right? And I said, we want to be able, not just me, because we're introducing him, so you're going to have to help me introduce the Killer Mike today. So I said we should at least be able to meet that standard, all right? So today, anytime you hear me say the word warrior or warriors, I want you to say Tuskegee. And the reason for that is, Tuskegee comes from a Muskegon word that means warrior or warriors. And if there's any word that exemplifies this brother, it's that word, warrior. He's a warrior to his core. So every time you hear me say what? Warrior or warriors, you need to say what? Tuskegee. All right. So when he was on the show, Charlemagne the God asked him, "How long have you been a master manifester?" And he thought about it and he said, I think maybe since I was around 9. I told my mother that I wanted to be an MC, and she said, "Go for it." Right? His mother, he calls her Denise. And he did. And so when he told his 4th grade teacher that he was going to be an MC, she said, "You're too smart to be that. You need to be a pilot." So he took up flying. Warrior. All right. And then he was asked on this show that I watched where he was with the CEO of Square. It's called Self-Made, and they asked the question, what skills should an entrepreneur have in order to engage in economic empowerment? He said, first, they must recognize who can do the job, and then fit the right person with the right job. And then he said, learn from the people around you. And the third thing he said, which really was my most favorite thing, he says, be willing to be forever a student, always learning, always growing, always getting better, moving higher. So that's who he is. Michael Render, AKA Killer Mike, is a warrior. And so I learned that he's more than just Tuskegee because he's a warrior. His people are from here. Did you guys know that? That his family down the road 2 miles or so from here, he's a native son. So we're just welcoming him back home, this warrior. And finally, I'm going to keep it short because I know he's got a lot of good things to say. He is the owner of this wonderful swag shop. He's been a major manifester. He started the Greenwood Bank. It's a digital bank named really after the Greenwood area here too, but I know it's connected with Black Wall Street. So he has been manifesting all of his life. He's in the tradition of the Booker T. Washingtons and the George Washington Carvers and the Mary McLeod Bethune. This brother is a manifester. And we should recognize that in all of us who have this capacity and willingness to do the hard work. And the last thing I wanted to say, because Mike and I have been in the same circles, of course, my husband and I, who's in the audience here, Sergeant Tinubu, we've lived in Atlanta for nearly 50 years. So when we moved there, he was about 1 year old. And we've worked on the same presidential campaign, working for one of the candidates. And then his wife turns out to be a Gullah Geechee from South Carolina like me. But the other thing that's more important that we share is a sister. I call her my sister. He calls her his auntie, and that's Tayo Ali. And when I told her that I was introducing you, she sent this message. So I'm going to read that off, and then we're going to hear from the warrior. All right. My phone locked up, so let me get it here. So this is from Sister Ali. Mike reminds us that true leadership is not measured by power gained, but by power shared. As a relentless advocate for at-risk youth, he lifts the least of these, giving voice to the voiceless, dignity to the overlooked, and hope for the future. He chairs her board in Atlanta. So Tuskegee, join me. We know that he's a 3 times Grammy winner. He's just not a 3 times, he swept every category that he had, right? The best album, the best song, and the best performer. We know all of that. But what we're going to learn more about today is that this son of Tuskegee is a mighty, mighty warrior. So join me in welcoming to the stage, Killer Mike, the warrior.
Thank you. I'm overwhelmed. I'm sure to cry at some point because every warrior does. That's right, love. I knew you was gonna be the one to catch it. I'm gonna talk about today reinvesting your success to turn around our towns and communities. When people hear the name Killer Mike, some people think rapper, some people think activist, some people think entrepreneur. I've won 3 Grammys in the past 4 years, and if you go the past 20 years, I've won 4 Grammys, as I got a first one counted on a flute with Outkast, but I still counted because I had the best verse on that song. Some people think of me as an activist because since I was 15 years old, I've been active in the Atlanta community with the Atlanta Fulton Commission on Children and Youth, later joined Kids for a Change, and have actively been trying to be an advocate, well, not trying, but being an advocate and an activist in my community to make sure that young people below the age of voting have an opportunity to speak and to shape my community. I didn't get into activism because I felt guilty for being successful. And the reason I say that is a lot of celebrities do. And whatever brings you to the work is fine. I just think that it's important that, like the 5-year-old that tugged on my grandmother's skirt when we were working Andy Young's campaign in 1980 and asked her, why are we doing this? And she looked at me and said, because that's what you're supposed to do. And those words have carried me throughout my entire life, and we'll talk more about that. And some people think rapper because I'm darn good at it. My grandmother was born in Shorter County, Shorter, Alabama, and her parents bought a farm 2 miles that way in the 40s. And I have the deed of that farm in my phone. And the deed, despite what people have said in the age of now, where they have Black women and Black men fighting and arguing, the deed did not just have my great-grandfather, Nathaniel H. Blackman's name on it. It also had his wife, Truzella Mackey Blackman's name on it. And in that example, what I saw was shared power between a man and a woman, the importance of land ownership understood by that man and woman, and that land is still in my family. So they obviously raised their children, including my grandmother, right and that you don't just sell off legacy. It's something to be preserved, to be cared for, to be grown. So I'm very proud, even though I carry my father's last name of Render, I'm very proud to be a Black man from Tuskegee, Alabama. All of my titles, no matter what people title me, and excuse me if I have a list, but I just had some oral surgery. All of my titles come back to something. And they come back to the community that produced me. And people a lot of times think that the community that produced me is simply Atlanta, and we're gonna get to Atlanta. But before we get to Atlanta, there was a woman who was born in 1932. And that woman's name was Betty Blackman. Betty with an I-E, as she would tell you, not a Y, baby. She was a little girl. She was a sharecropper with her family, and her family worked hard to buy a farm. She shaped me in every way, and her husband, Willie Sherwood, did too. So my legacy actually does not start in Atlanta. My legacy starts in Tuskegee, Alabama. And in starting that legacy, we got sent here during the summers. Damn, it was hot. We worked, whether it was sugar cane, picking beans, chickens, the girls cooking, the boys doing what we were told in terms of helping to farm. We worked because my grandmother understood that I was a lazy little chubby guy. And I needed to understand the importance of hard work and sacrifice. Booker T said, "Nothing ever comes to one that is worth having except as the result of hard work." I have a shortened version that I use in my barbershops, and we're going to talk more about the swag shop later, is your work ethic will determine your worth. Whatever your work ethic is will, in the end, determine what you are worth. In coming back to community, coming here today, I was overwhelmed with emotion because my grandmother would be so proud. She wanted me to go to Tuskegee. I argued and went to Morehouse instead. I dropped out of Morehouse to pursue music. I brought her a Grammy home and said I got a Grammy. And she said, "Well, Negro, that still ain't a college degree." She was never satisfied with good enough because her community wasn't satisfied with good enough. Booker T. Washington could have took an endowment. Booker T. Washington could have kept the university small. That wasn't good enough. He could have waited for someone to build it for him. Instead, he took students that made bricks, that built buildings that still stand on this campus, because good enough simply was not good enough in his community. George Washington Carver could have taught at a white school, had a pretty plush life, but that wasn't good enough. By Booker T's invite, he came to this university, and through agricultural teaching and through teaching in the classroom, he taught kids how to do much more and beyond they could have ever thought with the soil that was under their feet. Because good enough in this community of Tuskegee has never been good enough. You've always been taught in my family to strive for excellence, to push for more. So what my grandmother did in 1950 as an 18-year-old girl was decide to get on a bus and go to Atlanta, Georgia, and become a nurse. Because simply being in the comfort of her own home, in the comfort of her own farm, in the comfort of her family, in the comfort of the city that she was in Tuskegee, it wasn't good enough. And I would argue if it was not for my grandmother's determination to be better, not better than Tuskegee, not better than this town, but to be a better version of Betty, then she would have settled for good enough. But she didn't. She went to a community called Dixie Hills. She stayed with a cousin. That cousin had an exciting nightlife and a few boyfriends. So if a boyfriend was there, my grandmother could not sleep in the house. She would have to sleep on the screen porch on a bench. But because good enough wasn't good for her, she did that. And she said, well, when the men would leave, I would get up, take my bath, I would put on my clothes, I would walk 4 miles into downtown Atlanta, and I would go to nursing school. By the time 1952 came around, only 2 years into her studies, she bought her first house in the Collier Heights community, a community I grew up in, a community that was decidedly Black. They didn't integrate with white folks. They didn't beg white folks to be their neighbor, and they did not want to hear no, so they did not go seeking a yes. They said to themselves, there's a plot of land here. We can get the banks to already approve people. We can sign the deeds right there and the banking papers right there on the plots they buy. And over the course of the next years, from 1946 through the late 1960s, they built over 2,000 houses in an all-Black community that was purposely. And I make that distinction because they always say folks on the west side of Atlanta, we different, we too proud. Well, that's because we didn't beg to be next to somebody who didn't want us. That's because we understood from the time we were children that this community was built by you, for you, and it was to be reinvested in by you, for others that looked like you. When it came time to buy my 26-year-old daughter a house, I called her and said, come ride with your daddy. We went to the signing. She didn't know what we were signing for. I bought her a house directly behind her auntie, who lives in the same house that my grandmother bought, and our other sister lives in the house that our grandfather bought and never sold and rented and leased out, which allowed him to buy an RV and take us on vacation every summer. The people that raised me did not understand the concept of begging to be accepted. They did not accept the concept of living next to people who didn't look like you was supposedly better than the neighborhood you planned and built for yourself. Good enough in our community had never been good enough. So in spite of the things that I've accomplished in terms of advocacy, in terms of rapping, in terms of winning awards, it's never been good enough for me if I don't bring something back to my community. Because the education that I received at Collier Heights Elementary, Frederick Douglass High School, and later Morehouse College was not just for me. It was for my community. My teachers had a mission that these Black children growing up in this all-Black world of the west side of Atlanta, the only white folks I saw was on wrestling and PBS. I knew Ric Flair and Mr. Rogers. I didn't have 3 white teachers my whole life. What I had was a determined group of individuals that taught public school that were determined to make sure that these children know that they can be excellent, they must be excellent. And nothing else was accepted. I'm only one of the only friends that I know that didn't grow up in the same side of me can name my kindergarten through 12th grade teachers right off my hand because they had that profound of an impact on me. All my villains and heroes looked like me. So I learned to judge people by the content of their character very early because I didn't like Miss Everett as much as I like Miss Hainsworth. But I appreciated her investment in me. I appreciated being taught very young that you have a responsibility to represent this community in a way that is dignified and filled with integrity. In a way that is dignified and filled with integrity. I don't have the luxury of acting like I ain't who I am. I don't have the luxury of acting like I'm not standing in one of the greatest learning institutions as we speak and as you listen to me, ever built for us by us. My great-grandmother, Truzella Blackman, there's an old country word called "kari." It means you're sickly. I was a sickly child. I had asthma. We'd be on the farm, all my big cousins out on the lake and the pond, they swimming and stuff, everybody else. I'm chubby, I'm a little lazy, I'm buck teeth. I don't want to do much. I'm sitting on the front porch and a dog comes and gets to the chicken. Dog scoots around the yard, grabs a chicken. I run in the house. I tell my great grandmother, Big Mama, Big Mama, Big Mama's a dog at a chicken. Big Mama comes out of her apron, produces a 22 caliber pistol. Pow! Shoots that dog right in his hiding. That dog scoots on that way. She picks up that chicken, and with one ring, the head is in her hand. That chicken is running around with no head. She looks at me and says, go fetch me a bucket of water. I bolt through the house out the back door screaming, Big Mama's gonna kill me. She killed the dog. She killed the chicken. By the time I get to my big cousins, I'm having an asthma attack. She's gonna kill us all. And they shake their head and they laugh at me because my cousins had an advantage on me in that they lived with her year round. So they understood the connectivity of working and not wasting. My big mama didn't go run and look for my big daddy to solve a problem. She solved the problem immediately by pivoting that wild dog something in the hiney to think about. She didn't waste that chicken. That chicken was cooked and on a plate by 3 o'clock. And I was crying, saying, I'm not gonna eat my friend. After the adults got back from Montgomery, she took me to the side out the back while the older kids were taking care of stuff, cleaning up, and she fed me some ice cream. And she explained to me that you don't waste. She explained to me why she had to kill the chicken. She explained to me why we were eating the chicken. And she explained to me that unlike Atlanta, in Tuskegee, you had to do for yourself. Unlike Atlanta, you didn't have the luxury of people coming by to take care of you. You didn't have the same type of government assistance. So the mentality that my grandmother was drilling in me in Atlanta, I finally understood. It came from Tuskegee. And many people on the west side of Atlanta come from very rural areas. So there's a determination on the west side of Atlanta. What people perceive as arrogance from T.I. is a determination. It is a determination that says, I know I can. I can, I must, and I will. And what the west side of Atlanta, the Collier Heights, put in me was that we as a people, like Booker T believed, can cast down our buckets right where we are, and success is under our feet. No one is coming to save us. And this institution proves you can, you must, and you will save yourself. Transplant that mentality to the west side of Atlanta. In the rap game, people tell me, man, you don't really sound like you from the west side. I say my grandmother didn't allow me to speak that way. But, I hang out with y'all, I talk this jive or whatever, but we weren't allowed to. And that not allowance, what I understood was don't be afraid to be different. Don't be afraid to use proper English. And my grandmother didn't even use proper English, but she demanded it out of me. I'll say, I can help you. She would say, I tried to help you all I can. And I said, Mama, why do you say hope when it's help? She said, because I hope they get some help because it's not coming from me.